therapist where I spent most of my time just listening to other people's stories. But occasionally I'd be called out into the community to speak on different issues. There was one occasion where a middle school parent-teacher organization asked me to talk on children and self-esteem. And I thought, sure, I'll come talk about that. But the more I got into the subject matter, the more uncomfortable I became, thinking, what is self-esteem and how do you get it? And do I have it? Or how do you hold on to it once you do have it? So by the time the evening came, I was a little uncomfortable. But I'd done my research. I had all my theory down on paper. And in fact, I delivered a good 45-minute talk on children and self-esteem. And feeling quite relieved that the evening was over, I did something that was the first mistake when you don't really know what you're talking about. I opened the room up to questions. Well, most of the first questions that came through I could handle, like how many hours should my child study a night in order to get into Harvard? Or are 6, 7, 8 extracurricular activities okay? Does my child need to be a piano virtuoso in order to be successful in life? Well, one by one I helped calm down the room and talk about really the seeds of self-esteem and where those originate. One last hand in the back of the room and we could all go home. I noticed as she stood up that she looked different from other people in the auditorium. She was dressed in a sari and her black hair was pulled tight in a bun in the back of her head, and she spoke in a very strong Indian accent. She said, "My name is Indira. I had come to your country after the death of my husband in the hopes I might build a better life for my small son. I teach now here at the university. But it has not gone the way I had hoped. The children here have not been kind to my boy. They say that he talks funny, that his clothes are funny. Some even told him that he smells funny, and they don't include him in their games. So each night he cries himself to sleep in my arms and says, 'Let's go home, Mama.' And each night I too cry myself to sleep, wondering if in trying to give him a better life, perhaps I have hurt his self-esteem instead. So I ask you now as the expert, please tell me, should we stay in this country or should we go back to India? I need to know." Well, who am I to tell anybody what's the right path for them in this life? All the theory that I had just comfortably sent out for 45 minutes somehow seemed meaningless in this moment. But everyone was looking to me as the expert to find the right piece of wise advice to help Indira make her decision. So I just closed my eyes and hoped that something might come. Anything, in fact. And what came surprised me. What came was a story that I hadn't lived for over 20 years, and I didn't know what, if anything, it had to do with this moment. But having nothing else, I just began to tell it. It was my senior year of college. My roommate wrote for the college newspaper, and every Friday night she'd go out and cover a dance recital or a play. On this particular Friday, she, after dinner, was looking a little green, and I said, "Are you all right?" She said, "No, I'm not." I said, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And she said, "Actually, yes. Would you tonight go to a poetry recital and listen to the poet and then go backstage afterwards and interview her and then write an article for Monday's paper?" I had thought I was going to get her a glass of water. But I said yes, and that's how I found myself on a Friday night, instead of at the movies with my friends, sitting in an auditorium waiting to hear some poet do her thing. And when the lights went down, the most magnificent woman walked to the center of the stage. She must have been 6 feet tall and in a brilliant colored caftan, and she stood, and even her silence held the room. But then she began to recite her poetry. But she didn't just recite it. It was as if she sang it. And it sounded a little bit like this. "I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. And then they start a-hummin', a hive of honey bees, and I say, It's in the reach of my arms, the gaze in my eyes, the need for my care, 'cause I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. That's me and you and you. For the next hour, my Angelou held us in the palm of her hand as she shared with us her poetry, her brilliant wisdom, her way of just living her life. And I thought, if I had even just one small piece of this woman's grace, presence, voice, courage, the things that I could do in my life. And I couldn't wait to go home and thank my friend who had sent me on this evening. And then I remembered I had to go backstage afterwards and interview her for this article. And all these pre-prepared questions suddenly felt meaningless. So I went and knocked on her door when the evening was over, and she just welcomed me in with the same grace that she held 500 of us in the audience and sat me down, and I bumbled out, "Does every clod of dirt have the potential in the pressure to become a diamond like you?" It was a metaphor she had shared, but one that resonated so deeply with me. And she just smiled and she said, "The gift has already been given. You're alive." And somehow that wasn't enough for me. I just kept looking at her, and she went on to say, "Honey, I sense you're looking for that one right path to walk to make things right. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, there is no one path. The trick is to just walk whatever road you're on with dignity, and when you fall in the hole, and you will, because everybody does, just let yourself grieve. And then when you pull yourself up, as you must, find a way to just sing again." I returned to my own auditorium where all those faces were still looking at me, and Indira at the back with tears on her cheeks. And I said, "That's all I know." "Thank you," she said. "That's enough." And as I watched people file out that night, I realized that something profound had happened. I imagined she had entered that auditorium very much alone, but because she had dared to stand and share a piece of her story, and I had met her with one of mine, I saw that she was now surrounded with people who were engaging her, talking to her, I hope supporting her in her life now that path that she was walking. I knew that something also profoundly had happened for me. I had entered with theories, facts, and a prepared talk, but found that the real power in the evening came through a story that led me to connect to my own innate wisdom, share it with another in such a way that she could use it in whatever way I didn't even know, but somehow found clarity to move forward in her own life. And that, for me, was the beginning of my own exploration into story and what it can do and where it needs to go.